Hello, everybody. Welcome to the exjw Book Club. I am here today presenting a new book that was published by fellow exjw Jonathan Berger. He just published this book, and I am so excited to finally be able to have an interview with Jonathan and promote his book. Jonathan reached out to me on Twitter and sent me his book before publishing, and I was privileged to read his book before he published it. And I gotta say, it is such an amazing book. I loved it so much. I related to the book too much. I mean, the title alone, I was a teenage door knocker, literally my life. I'm going to read the introduction for Jonathan's book. It's the summer of 1997. Teenagers flock to the malls for fun. Wide leg jeans are in, and there's no cell phones in sight. However, for a Jehovah's Witness, summer is a time for church, Bible studies, and knocking on doors to tell people about Jehovah. I Was a Teenage Door Knocker follows the story of Jonathan, your average American teenager who happens to be growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. This hilarious, down to earth, coming of age story follows Jonathan as he tries to maneuver puberty, friendship, dating, and partying, all while in one of the strictest religions on earth. So there you have it, folks. That's the introduction for Jonathan's book. I highly suggest that you order this book for yourself. And please order it for your local library so that more people would be able to read this book. The next 40 minutes is going to be the interview that I just had with Jonathan, and we jump right into a conversation. I didn't even have time to hit record. I mean, this is so much fun, and I love doing this for the community. So I really hope that you enjoy it.
The United States and North Carolina, area you're familiar with, obviously.
Yes.
I grew up in a family of Jehovah's Witnesses. I was born in Jehovah's Witness. My mom and dad both had what I would call miracle conversions, where they thought that God kind of came down from on high and gave them the Jehovah's Witnesses. My mom was thinking about a Bible scripture, praying about it, talking to a preacher about it. No one could explain it. They showed up at her door with that exact scripture. My dad was in a situation where he was in a hospital. Two Jehovah's Witnesses just happened to be there, and they stopped him from what he said was making a life-altering decision at the hospital. So my mom was really hardcore into it. My dad, not so much. I was raised with two older brothers, and one left when I was younger. So he was really gung-ho about the religion. He was there one day, then just gone the next day. And then my older brother, he was kind of the most believing in all of it. And he believed in it until he was, much later in life, and then sort of made his exit. For me, I don't think I ever really bought into it. I remember being a little kid and thinking some things don't make sense to me about this. And I always wanted to do the bad things, I guess, when I was a kid. And I had my friends. I had my friends at school. I preferred to hang out with my friends at school, during the day. And so my parents, when we'd leave school, I'd be all, I didn't want to come back home kind of because of that.
Right. Because you already knew when you get home, it's going to be witness stuff all the time.
Yeah. All the time. So I got lucky too, in the sense that while my mom was a really hardcore believing witness, my dad was sort of on the fence about it. I think he stayed in because he felt sort of social pressure, but he didn't really make us, he kind of bailed us out on a lot of things, kids. Where my mom would be like, they can't have worldly friends. My dad would be like, they got to have friends at school. Or our mom would be like,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, or our mom would be like, they can't do this. My dad would be like, well, they're kids, you got to let them do these things. And one really good thing was, even though I don't think my mom really wanted to, they both felt like, if I was going to join the religion or their kids were going to join the religion, it had to be our decision and not theirs. So they also did a pretty good job of hey, you need to study yourself. My mom encouraged me to go to other churches and, see what other churches had to offer. And she was very adamant about hey, you have to make this decision for you. And my dad was as well. I mean, my mom was more like, it was kind of one of those, you've got to make a decision for you, but I'm going to lean into you to push you into becoming a Jehovah's Witness. So I was lucky with that. I didn't get baptized. So technically I was never,
Really?
yeah. I didn't get baptized. I thought about it. My mom pressured me. When we talk about the book, we can talk about that a bit, but it happened exactly like how it happened in the book. Which was that my mom sort of pressured me into going and studying with a ministerial servant at the time who's about to become an elder, and then I just kind of answered the questions truthfully, and the elders rejected me. So I always
Right.
say, I told my mom, hey, it wasn't me, it was them. I just answered the questions truthfully as
Mm-hmm.
I could.
Right.
So from that point forward, I was kind of in this zone of don't know whether I want to stay in or just completely leave. And then I kind of left. And then when I was in my early 20s, that's when I really started researching everything and looking into things and really became active in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community after that.
Right. Okay. So let me back up just a little bit so I can get your story correct.
Yeah.
So your parents were converted.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're technically second generation.
Yes.
Okay. And your older brother, you said you had two other siblings. Did they get baptized?
They did get baptized. Yeah.
Okay. And then the firstborn, your older sibling, he's disassociated or DF?
Disfellowship.
Disfellowship.
Both of my brothers are
Okay.
disfellowship. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And you're the baby.
Yes.
Okay. Now I see. Um okay, next question I have for you is I mean, you do describe this in your book, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to explain how strict was the household because they are converts and they want to raise
Yeah.
their children as Jehovah's Witnesses. But like you mentioned before, your dad was pretty lenient and your mom was more of the stricter parent, which I do think it's more common among the Jehovah's Witnesses is that the women are really more,
Yeah.
especially with the kids, are like so hardcore and so strict. So how strict was your household?
So just to back up just a tad, an interesting fact is my dad was actually a third generation Jehovah's Witness technically. So
Okay.
my grandma was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. She left when she was like 15. Her mom was a very hardcore, strict Jehovah's Witness, and my dad went to live with his grandma for a little bit and so he had some experience with the witnesses, but she was just way too strict, and he said, yeah, I'm not gonna do any of this. He was kind of a rebel rouser, so he was like, I'm gonna go out and go party and do all that stuff.
Mhm.
So I think maybe that had an impact on the family situation. My dad's experience with that. My grandma, I think my grandma may have been disfellowshipped as well. I probably need to ask her about that. But in my
Mhm.
family, how strict was it? It was hard to say because sometimes it was really strict. Other times it didn't feel that strict at all. Like I would have some other friends that their parents were just obsessive about the rules and
Mhm.
everything. So I do when I talk to a lot of other Jehovah's Witnesses, I had a unique upbringing in that it was strict but not overly strict. My
Right.
parents kind of had this approach of, hey, just as long as you're doing good, that's sort of good enough for us. I think
Mhm.
maybe my mom realized too, I was just too hard to control. So she was like, by the time I came around, she was like, okay, I'm done with trying to be bad cop all the time.
Right. Okay. So you're technically also the one that got away because you're the baby, you didn't get baptized, you didn't make the truth your own. So how did your family, I mean, how did they treat you or deal with you after they knew for a fact like, okay, Jonathan's not going to get baptized, he's
Oh,
not going to be a witness?
you know, I think they knew. I mean, they knew when I was like 16, 17, I was having conversations with my parents where I think they knew, that it was like, hey, this isn't for him. He's going to do whatever I mean, I was very hard headed and very stubborn. And, my mom will say, hey, I couldn't tell him what to do. He had to make the decision on his own. Um, Where I got lucky was not being baptized, because suddenly there's a loophole for the parents where they
Yes.
can go, okay, well, this one's disfellowshipped, right? We can't talk to this one, but this one technically never got baptized. So we can maintain a relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think my mom was very devastated, when I had the conversation with her, like, hey, I know never say never, but this is never happening.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just so give up the dream. She was very devastated. I think my dad was probably secretly relieved. It's hard to know. He's not alive anymore, so I can't really have a lot of these conversations with him. But I think he was kind of secretly relieved, and he was
Wow.
just happy that I was happy.
Right. Wow. That's like you're lucky, that's a lucky
Yeah,
situation. I mean, not that many people get that circumstance where at least they can talk to you. I mean, they might keep a distance from you because I mean, are
yeah.
they still active?
My mom is still active.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my dad was my dad was an elder when he passed away. So he was
Oh, I'm
still very
sorry.
much active. But yeah, me and my brother talk about this all the time. It's like the question is, did he really believe it? If you have to question if somebody really believed it, then usually, and it being a Jehovah's Witness, they're on the edge or whatever.
Yes.
But my dad did a lot of stuff with the regional building committee, so he was kind of like an important function there locally in the
Yes.
regional building committee.
Yes, you write about that in your book, about those experiences of you
Yeah,
also doing the building stuff. Wow, that's interesting. Do you think it was also because of your mom? Like maybe he wanted just to keep the peace or keep the family together by being with your mom?
yeah,
Yeah,
100%, 100%.
yeah.
Um, I don't want to spill too much family tea, out in the open, but like my dad was a very complicated man who probably, if he was not a Jehovah's Witness, I think he probably would have been bisexual. Um, I think that he had a very tough childhood growing up. Uh, you know, I think the Jehovah's Witness thing, and it's like this for a lot of people, right? It sort of
Right.
becomes their outlet to kind of keep them on the straight and narrow, or to
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep them in this sort of safe zone.
Right.
And for our dad, looking back on it now, it's probably like that was his way of kind of staying in a safe zone. And in order to keep the peace with the family, he would overrule my mom on some things. Other things he would kind of let go. But I think he did very much have a belief of, I don't want the kids to sort of be forced into something that they tried to
Mm-hmm.
force me into. And
Right.
that was the one thing he kind of always stood solid on against my mom when it came to
Mm-hmm.
the Jehovah's Witness stuff and the kids, was just,
Right.
hey, we're going to let them sort of lead a normal life, and
Mm-hmm.
let the chips kind of fall where they may, right?
Wow. Yeah, that's at least for that, you know what I mean? At least the dynamic allowed that because, he is the head of household. So whatever, dad says, it
Yeah.
should go, so your mom had to submit. And
Yeah, yeah.
thankfully it worked out.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things I feel weird about because it's kind of,
Hmm.
I'm very thankful my dad did that, but I kind of feel bad for my mom that trump card was always laid out, and then she kind of just had to go, yeah, you're right. Okay, I get,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
For you guys, because he was actually protecting you as well, your free will,
yeah,
your will of choice, your freedom of choice. So
yeah.
you had a great dad. You had a great dad. Um, Okay, so moving on from your family life, household life, now you're growing up, you're in your teenagehood, and this is what you describe in your book. And I feel like that book, like your book, when you sent it to me to read it, I connected so much with
Oh,
it. I
thanks.
related. I was like too much into it. Like I was screaming laughing when it was funny. I was in shock when you would mention certain landmarks or like where the location of where you grew up and stuff like that because I was also from that area and I remember
Yeah.
texting you on Twitter like, "Oh my god, I was there." And I cannot believe you grew up in the same place where I
Yeah.
actually was disfellowshipped in. So I have like so much trauma with that town, with that state. But you had such an amazing childhood and you describe it so well that I was having fun through you. Like I was
Thanks.
living
Yeah.
in North Carolina through you
Mhm.
in the book. So I am so happy that you wrote it the way that you did. The humor that you put into it, like it I felt so good about your writing and your book. So I am so happy. Congratulations that you
Oh, thanks.
finally published it. I want everybody to go get that book. Order it for your library, order it for yourself. I don't care what you got to do, get this book. Um so tell me now your inspiration for the book, writing the book, and everything that has to do with the book.
Oh, you know what? The inspiration is kind of twofold. I went through all the stuff with the Lloyd Evans sort of scandal and sort of got sucked into that whole thing.
Oh my God. I am so thankful you brought that up because that's how I know you, to be honest. That's the only reason why I know of your name and
I
your face and
I I
everything.
I say, Ruby, it's the funniest thing because I think the religion, sort of that thing, right? Like, I think anybody that follows me and knows we're sort of on this diametrically opposed political spectrum,
Uh-huh.
right? And
Yes.
probably like where we sit on our sort of our social value stuff,
Yes.
right? And those are one of the two things that can bring sort of the people on the opposite ends together, right? Your shared experience with something.
Right.
So, we had our shared experience with the ex-Jehovah's Witness stuff. Then when the Lloyd Evans thing happened, and to be honest, I probably got a little too obsessed with it. Because sometimes I can get a little bit obsessive with things. And,
Yeah.
my girlfriend who, God bless her, which I was going through it. She was just like, okay, if that's what you got to, she was just, like, okay, put up with
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and everything. But yeah, when that happened, that just sort of struck a nerve with me. I think more because of how he reacted to it.
Right.
Maybe the other stuff, if you just apologize, you're fine. But anyways, when all that stuff happened, then he was sort of just somebody that I knew from the community from years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't really that close, but we had talked a few times. And then when more stuff started coming out, and people started sort of really digging into his book, I'm like, hey, I've always been a creative writer. I am in marketing. I've been in marketing for almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've written national TV ads. I've done a lot of stuff on the creative marketing end. And when people were
Mm-hmm.
kind of critiquing his book, I was like, man, this guy made the community pay for his book. You
Yep.
know, he wrote this
Yep.
book. I'm like, why haven't I written a book? Like, if this guy can do it,
Exactly.
surely I
Exactly.
can. Surely I can do it. Now, to his credit, I don't know if he had a ghostwriter or not, but writing a book's really freaking hard.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, kudos to him. He got it out there. But that was part of the inspiration. I started thinking I want to write a book, just to say that I can do it, kind of.
Yeah,
I was kind of feeling
definitely.
in that mode. And then I was listening to Tom Sawyer on like a not book on tape. That's going to age me saying book on tapes, but an audiobook. I was
Yeah.
listening to an audiobook of Tom Sawyer, and I remembered how much I loved, Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer as a kid because it reminded me of when I was a kid and just
Mm-hmm.
the sort of crazy stuff you get into just in the name of being a kid and having fun. And
Yes.
that's the beauty of those books. And I thought, me and my friends, we did a lot of stuff like they did in Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. We were the bad kids in the hall that were always up to something that, the good ones in the hall looked down on. And,
Yep.
we were bad association that you weren't like, and in
Mm-hmm.
reality, we weren't doing drugs. We weren't
Right.
drinking. We
Right.
were pretty much having wholesome fun,
Yeah.
you know,
Being
compared
regular
to
kids.
compared to worldly teenagers, we were having wholesome fun. And
Mm-hmm.
I just got to thinking about kind of how a lot of the stuff I've seen from the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, especially book related, that sort of stuff, it a lot of times follows the same format, which is it's very like based on the belief system.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually based on, I was hugely traumatized,
Yeah.
sexual abuse, physical abuse, this sort
Mm-hmm.
of stuff, which those stories need to be out there. They absolutely need to be out there. But I just thought, that wasn't my childhood. And maybe there's other witnesses that didn't have that childhood, or maybe it is a fun way to convey the message that isn't so heavy kind of handed.
Right.
And that was
Yes.
sort of my goal with the book, is like, okay, let's make just kind of a fun story that still has some of those elements sprinkled in. And maybe that's a little bit easier to read for non-Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe that's a little bit, sometimes you don't always want a heavy, hard read. You just want an
Right.
easy kind of fun read. So those two
Yeah.
things kind of combined really is what pushed me to write this book.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm so glad that it did, because that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, if other people can do this, why can't we do it? And we can do it in our own creative way. And just like you did, it was very lighthearted, it was very fun, it was funny. Um and I'm so glad that you actually did it, because everybody says, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and they all talk and they never do it. So I was like, "Yo, as soon as you do, text me, call me, do whatever you gotta do," because this is why I do the XJW book club. Is I'm promoting these books, I'm advertising them. I wanna give them a platform, because I'm like, these are the people that we need to be, putting up, because if it wasn't for us, who would be there for us? You know what I mean? Like, nobody else is there
Yeah.
for us, only us. So
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that you contributed in your own little way. I mean, even with the Lloyd Evans stuff, you were still a huge name, like a huge voice, and the only one that was out here doing what you were doing, like the interviews, the videos, the, giving your opinion, very opinionated. And I was thankful for that, because I was feeling the exact same feelings you were, but you were the only guy doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we,
it was that was so crazy to me, that like nobody that there weren't other male voices sort of
right.
jumping in on that,
Hmm.
to at least
Hmm.
say, "Hey, this is so crazy. Like, this whole situation is so, it doesn't pass a smell test. It's so crazy." And especially in our community, look, I mean, I agree with the people in the community who go, all voices are needed.
Yes.
I said it before, like, I'm a hardcore liberal, but we need both voices. We need conservative voices. We need liberal voices. We need, the in between voices. We need the fun, creative voices. We need the angry voices. The community is made up of. It's a big tent pole that sort of captures
Right.
everybody, and we're not always going to agree at all
Right.
times, but we need those voices. And my bigger thing with him was, if you're going to be the head voice,
Right.
you better have your stuff straight. And you better
Yes.
not be doing stuff that's going to make us all look silly when a reporter asks you a question. This is aside from all of the crazy misogynistic sort of
Right.
stuff
Right.
that was attached to it.
Yes, exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I literally say that in my bio on YouTube. I don't know if you have read it, but I'm like, the truth is, there are a lot of left-leaning ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that are content creators, but you don't really see the other side of that. And so I was willing to be one of those voices, because I am, like you said, we're on very two different political spectrums. So yeah, we have different opinions, but this is what brings us together.
Yeah.
And so we are both open-minded enough to entertain this, to entertain anything, any conversation, any discussion. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because yes, we are both needed. All voices are needed, and should be considered. You know what I mean? Like, we
Yeah.
shouldn't be saying, "Oh, well, I don't agree with you, so I'm not going to talk to you."
Yeah.
Or, "Sorry, Jonathan, you're a liberal and I'm a conservative, so I'm not going to talk to you or bring your book on my channel." You know what I mean? Like, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
um
Well, and I think too, it's like part of the problem with the I think the sort of social media dynamic that it brings to it. And I always say this whenever I'm arguing, the argument kind of goes too far on social media. It's like, man, if we were sitting here having a beer at a
right.
bar, we wouldn't be getting all angry and posting mean
Exactly.
gifs and all this stuff. I get it's fun. I like debating. I'm an opinionated person, but I also
Right.
think it's like, there also needs to be more of these intersections where we
Right.
can meet and go, hey, we don't agree on this, but we agree on this, and maybe we can meet in the middle. Maybe you'll change my mind a little bit on one thing, I'll change your mind a little bit on something, and we can find a way
Right.
to make it work a bit.
Yes, because this is more important to me than any other position or opinion. The XW community and anything that pertains to it is more important to me for the community, and then for also non-Jehovah's Witnesses to see that this functions, this works, and we make it work. We try to make it work because we grew up knowing how to shun people, how to get rid of somebody when you
Yeah.
don't agree with them. So we're learning how to get in, to be a little bit more inclusive, how to bring ourselves together. And I'm happy that we're doing this. This is exactly why I'm doing it. And I'm so thankful that you reached out to me, and we're doing this. Um, so anyways, back to your book. Because I know that this is the main reason why we're here. um, but anyways, I love the front cover of your book. Who designed it? I'm just curious.
Oh, so it actually was. I had this concept in my head. My girlfriend is a great graphic designer, UX
Mhm.
designer. By that's her job as a UX designer. She's a great artist as well. She started concepting some art for me. She was very busy at work. I was like, hey, I'm just gonna use Fiverr and just find
Mhm.
like a good artist on there who's who clearly has reviews, who's not too underpriced, because that's the thing when you're searching for these people, if they're too low, you got to kind of
Mhm.
find a price. And
Mhm.
I talked to to that designer on there, and yeah, my girlfriend kind of already had sort of the structure, and I was going back and forth. I just told her, I said, hey, I just want a hand knocking on a door, because originally I wanted like me standing next to my mom with her like jabbing her finger in my back,
Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
kind of got tough to draw. So I said, hey, just put a hand there, knocking on the
Mhm.
door, make the back so it's like somebody peeking through a window shade that's saying
Mhm.
they're not home, and make it these sort of 90s colors, because it's set in the 90s, and I wanted it to kind of have that 90s almost graphic novel vibe
Yes.
on the cover to it.
You definitely got it, because that's why I was curious. When I was looking at it, I felt like I was little again. Like that those are the types of colors and the types of shapes that we used to see when we were little. So
Yeah.
that's why I was like, "Oh, this artwork is amazing." So I just wanted to put that out there. The
Thanks.
artwork is amazing. I love the book, cuz I read the book before you published it. So I
Yeah.
don't know if there was any other changes or whatever, if you've edited certain things like that, but the main storyline, like everything that you went through growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, amazing job. I loved it. And I do want to ask you another question. So now that you are no, I mean, you're no longer Jehovah's Witness, you were never baptized, but how are your family dynamics now with you as just fellowship brothers and your mom?
Me and my brother, my older brother, we're really close. My oldest brother, we're a little bit estranged, but that's because of some other issues that are
Hmm.
non Jehovah's Witness related. Me and my mom, it's a bit rocky sometimes. I mean,
Hmm.
look, me and my mom were very much alike. I'm like, my brother was like my dad. I was like my mom. We really love each other a lot, but I've always taken the stance after my early 20s, when I really, especially once I started doing, back in the day, I used to do the meetups in
Hmm.
Charlotte, North Carolina, and run those. And
Hmm.
you meet so many people who are just so traumatized, and so their whole world is wrapped around this thing
Hmm.
that's just shoved them aside. And
Hmm.
sometimes you'd get a call, when you any ex-Joe's Witness that's running these groups knows that you'll get the call every once in a while where somebody will go, I can't take it, I'm thinking about killing myself, or I'm thinking about doing self-harm, I'm just. And sometimes I'd have to find myself telling the people, hey, look, I know it's terrible, but if you're going this far, maybe you should think about going back. If it's
Hmm.
this much affecting your life, which is like the worst thing you can kind
Right.
of, you feel like telling somebody, but it's like, hey, either you have to get help from a therapist
Professional.
or a
Right. Right.
professional,
Professional.
whoever it is, you have to get professional help, or rather than kill yourself, maybe you need to go back for a little bit and reassess or something. I don't know, but it just
Right.
got so sort of damaging psychically, and my sort of spiritualness got so damaged from that it sort of made me feel like a hypocrite when I would be having this normal relationship with my mom and going,
Mm.
hey, let's all love each other and stuff, and meanwhile you are shunning, my brother. So I kind of took the approach with my mom that it was like, as long as she's shunning my brother, she doesn't get the full uh, push and
Mhm.
pull for me. in a relationship, because there has to be consequences uh, for her. You know, if she's treating my brother this way, she can't have the good relationship with me. It's just not going to happen. You know, so
Mhm.
hey, you want to suffer for your faith? Well, then you got to suffer for your faith. You know, I'm not going to make it easy for you
Right.
on this. So,
Right.
you know, I'm still friendly with my mom. You know, we play Wordle every day uh,
Mhm.
together or whatever, but we don't really have deep conversations or
Mm.
really in-depth conversations. You know, she kind of keeps her distance. I kind of keep my distance. Every once in a while,
Mhm.
we'll argue about JW theology, and then we keep our distance, you know, completely for a month
Yep.
or two because we're both
Yep.
upset at each other, and it comes back. So there really isn't much of a family dynamic, other than I would say me and my brother are, you know, extremely tight now.
Wow. I mean, I think that's a good thing, honestly, because you still got to protect yourself. And you already know that she is still under the indoctrination that if it gets too far, oops, I can't talk
Yeah,
to you anymore. So then they feel that guilt. And I felt like, so why are you putting yourself through this? And I mean, even if I'm your only kid, like th- you are my mom, can't change that. I'm your daughter, can't change
yeah.
that. But if it makes you guilty every single time you come over or every single time that we talk, then just stop, like
You know
keep,
what? The hard
yeah.
part is it always feels like they're a little bit of Darth Vader. It's like there's that good in you, so you know. It's like it's there. I can tell when you talk to me. It's like you've got regrets. You'll never admit it,
Right.
you know, but you got regrets. And I think, you know, the hard part too. I was telling my girlfriend about this was, you know, it's so difficult when you're talking to if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you kind of don't understand, but you know when you're talking to a Jehovah's Witness, their end goal is always conversion,
Yeah,
always.
exactly.
And like with a parent, it's sometimes hard to know, is your end goal conversion or because you actually love me, or so
Struggle.
yeah, to your point,
Yeah.
what you said about protecting yourself, you have to decide, like, for me it was like I can't trust you that it's not conversion.
Right.
And even I flew her here to the Netherlands, gave her like a little vacation, stuff like that. I
Mhm.
remember we're in the car. I even drove her to the Watchtower's, headquarters here in the Netherlands
Mhm.
because she wanted to do a tour of the local Bethel here. And
Mhm.
afterwards, she was like, "Oh, they really need media people and video people, especially. Maybe you could work there." And I'm like, "Are you
Goodness.
crazy? Like, like, why would you even bring this up? I've been out of this mess for 20 years. Like, why
Wow.
would you even bring this up?"
Wow.
So she still, has her little
Mhm.
hope, I think, and but yeah, it's never gonna happen.
Right. Well, I'm glad you say that. You know what I mean? Like you're convicted. You know yourself. You have your own identity, and you've had the time to be
Yeah,
you. Like this wasn't forced upon you. So I'm really thankful about that for you in your situation.
thanks.
Um, is it okay if I ask you maybe a little bit more personal questions, like how are you now? Like what are
Yeah,
what are your thoughts about your future now?
yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
okay. So so go ahead. How do you feel about now, like this has nothing to do with you anymore. Now you're your own person, you have a career, you move to the Netherlands, like you have a whole new life basically. So where do you see yourself going and what are you doing now?
Right now, I'll start with the right now because the where do I
Yeah.
see myself going? That's like a tough one, right? Uh,
Yeah.
right now, I'm living with my girlfriend. We have a wonderful new puppy, so the focus is the puppy all the time. It's like
Yeah.
it
It's like a
it, it
baby. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
a
yeah,
kid.
yeah. It is a black hole of attention at all
Mhm.
times. I work for a very large multinational heavy lift and moving company called Mammoth.
Mhm.
And for them, I produce a lot of video content and make a lot of video content for them. So it's a nice, fun job. I get to see the world's biggest cranes and all these, crazy things that most people don't get to see
Mhm.
on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, we're looking to buy a house here in the Hague or around the area and get settled in there. The
Nice.
future, man, I don't know. I've done so much stuff. My hope is that we have a nice little nest egg and
Mhm.
that we can live comfortably and go on vacations. And me and my girlfriend, we like to travel. She's a big traveler, so we're going to. Um, why am I forgetting the name of it all of a sudden? Bali. Yeah, thanks, babe. We're going to Bali in October. So that's going to be a fun
Nice.
trip, and we want to go to Patagonia. And she's been to Japan. I want to also go to Japan with her. So the big things: just enjoy life. Make enough money to be able to enjoy life, and just
Nice.
roll with everything else. Right?
Wow, very nice. Yeah, this is what I love hearing. I love to hear people describe the life that you have now. Like despite everything in your past, it's like how do we move forward? How do we grow into ourselves? How do we get to know ourselves and our likes and our dislikes and to move forward with that? Like that's amazing. And I love to showcase that because I want to show the community that there are other things in life to do, to talk about, to be interested in. It doesn't always have to be about ex Jehovah's Witness stuff and things like that. But I do appreciate your contribution because of the book. You know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to ask you. So where do you see yourself in the future of the XJW community? Like you got this book now. Do you see yourself at doing any future projects for the community?
It's so weird because I've kind of been in like, way back when I was very, very active in the community before there was Twitter, before there was,
Mm-hmm.
really YouTube and all this stuff. I kind of felt the same way about it, which
Mm-hmm.
is like, if you get really active in it, like with what you're doing, like with what others do, you kind of have to go in just 1,000% if you want to succeed. You
Right.
just have to go all in, and you have to, sort of start your life sort of revolving around
Yeah.
this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like it was the same way with I like playing music. I love writing songs. Uh, I could never go on tour. It just
Yeah.
was not in my DNA to be on a tour, to be in a minivan,
Yeah. No.
going from city to city, not getting any sleep, having to,
Mm-hmm.
to drink or whatever just to feel something. That was not for me. And I think the ex Jehovah's Witness community is sort of the same. I like having my toe kind of dipped in the water.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would ever want to be like fully immersed in it or going like, hey, I'm this.
Right.
I'm the person you're going to be coming to for all of your information or something like that. Like that just never really caught on for me. I think partly because at some point you have to deal with the trauma. So dealing with the trauma is like, washing yourself through with it and kind of being obsessed with it and,
Mhm.
finding everywhere where did I go wrong? What was the
Mhm.
thing that pushed me in that direction? Or, what was the thing that caused this? Haven't, I don't want to say that I've fully gotten over it because even writing this book, there were moments where I was like crying and moments where I was just like, man, this was kind of, I thought I
Right.
had a real good childhood, but now looking back on
Mhm.
it, like, man, that was kind of fucked
Yeah.
up. This,
Yeah.
what was going on. And there were moments where with my girlfriend, I was crying to her and being affected
Right.
by this book when I thought, man, I've moved on from all this stuff like a long time
Right.
ago.
Mhm.
So I also feel like, yeah, for most of that stuff, I've moved on, and it's not there isn't a need to really push hard, I guess, in the community at like when I was younger.
Right. Okay. No, that totally makes sense. I mean, I feel the same way. Like like I started this way. You know what I mean? Like I started coming out with that same background, ex Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah,
But I'd also want to move to different things. I want to branch out. I want to use my channel or like my energy and put it and direct it into other things.
yeah, yeah.
So I guess that book was for you, it was like the book. It's for you,
Mhm.
it was music. For different people is different things. But I also do see like the necessity for us in the community. So
Yeah,
whenever something comes up and I know that I can contribute to it, I'm there. I'm on it. Like I am tweeting about it. I'm making a video about it because it's something that I feel still deeply about. Like I take it too
yeah,
seriously enough that I don't just want to not talk about it. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm half in, half,
You know another
I
crazy
always debate it.
Yeah, you know another crazy thing, Ruby, though, is like so the train station that I go to go to work,
Hmm.
uh, there are always Jehovah's Witnesses out there. And I haven't talked to a Jehovah's Witness in years. I
Right.
mean, if they come to the
Hmm.
door here and I'll go, "Hey, do you speak English?" They'll usually, I think they can speak English a lot of times, but they'll just go no because they don't want to spend any
Hmm.
more time at the door than they have to a lot of
Hmm.
times. But I walked up to these two witnesses because I had my book and I thought, oh, I'm going to just, I've always wanted to go up and sort of approach them, every time I see
Hmm.
them, but I'm like, I got my book now, so I can, kind of make up a fun story. So I said, hey,
Hmm.
I'm reading this book about this teenage Jehovah's Witness, who's kind of forced into the religion. And I had an interesting question for you,
Uh-huh.
but after I talked to them, I was so sort of on edge and full of
Hmm.
nerves. And I was like, man, I forgot like how,
Yup.
scary it is sometimes
Yup.
to talk to these people. And that also is sort of like, yeah, I don't want to feel that way a
Hmm.
lot. And I think doing what you're doing, and others are doing, you sometimes have to put yourself in that
Hmm.
space, So I think y'all are
Yes.
braver than me when it comes to that, of
Hmm.
you got to relive all these things a lot of times. And
Yeah, a
it's
little bit.
yeah, it's even talking to them, it was tough for me.
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
That's why I always say protect yourself, because even though we are moving on and we're healing together, you got to really protect yourself because it could be a little hairline trigger that will ruin the success that you've made. So
yeah,
I'm always like always protecting myself, like mentally, emotionally, from certain conversations or topics or whatever. Um and I don't want to let that success, you know, trample down just because my mom texted me or whatever. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like a simple text or a simple phone call could really spiral you. So that's why I stay focused on this community, on you, and on what I do with my videos and stuff like that. That's why I focus more on that, because I'm like, this
yeah.
is what's more important. Talking about Jonathan and his book is more important than worrying about all of this other stuff
Yeah,
that doesn't matter anymore. Like, stop it already. I want to focus on moving forward. I want to focus on putting everybody's achievements up on here and promoting that, because you are the living example of moving away, getting a career. You have a relationship now that's not Jehovah's Witness. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know how to date. We
yeah,
don't know how to like get deal with people in the outside world in this way. So that's why when I hear you guys talking, or like whenever I interview somebody, I'm like, you are living proof that it is possible. You can do it. You can go to college, you can get a job, you can have a relationship in the world, you could even move to a different country, because look at this
yeah,
guy, he's in the Netherlands. Like, what are you doing over there? You know what I mean? So
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah. I mean, I like it's so tough when you come out of being a Jehovah's
Mhm.
Witness because you have to restart everything. And I always count myself lucky because when I had to restart, I was like 19 years old. And it's easy when you're 19, right?
Right.
Because it was like I just went out and got a worldly roommate.
Mhm.
And, once I had a worldly roommate, it was like then I had way more worldly friends
Mhm.
through her. I
Right.
kind of had this built-in social life through her that helped, so I could kind of just hit the ground running, right? And when you're
Right.
19, you're not as, you're easy. It's easy to change, and it's easy to kind of just go with the flow on things. Versus when you're much older and you leave, and then suddenly it's like, oh my god, I've got to make friends. To your point, how do I make friends? Well, when I try to make friends, they think that I'm weird because
Yep.
I've still got all this sort of
Yep.
Jehovah's Witness stuff wrapped into everything.
Yeah.
And I would always tell people, you have when you're leaving, you need to give yourself like 2 or 3 years because that's when you see the big changes. Once you get the social group of friends, and it may just be two friends that you
Yep.
end up having, right? But once you get that, once you get the job and realize like, oh, I can work every day. I can, you know, uh, you start doing things for yourself. You kind of need those couple of years, and it's tough. I mean, hearing your story, I'm like, how you made it out is, a
Hmm.
miracle in of itself. And that you're
Right.
not just stuck
Yeah.
in a bed with the light turned off at all times, right? Having to deal with
Mhm.
that. So, um, yeah, it takes years. It takes years.
Right. Yes. Wow. Thank you for saying that because, yeah, it does take a lot of time and a lot of work. Like,
Yeah,
you really have to do the mental work to move past that. And then when you see us at the end of that tunnel, you know that it's possible. But when you're going through that tunnel, it's hard as hell.
yeah, yeah,
And I want to tell the truth about that, and
yeah,
that's why I do this. I talk about these things because I'm like, look, I went through hell and back, but just because you see me here all looking nice and I got my life together, you don't know. I mean, you sometimes people don't realize the work that it took. Like you can mentally hit rock bottom or physically, and they don't see that, but they
yeah,
always see you smiling and shining and everything. But I want to help people see that, see the time and the effort and the work, and then you can have this, the
yeah,
you're somewhat healed enough to write a book, to do a video, to start a channel, to be more outspoken. But that takes a lot of work. So I really want to thank you for doing that for yourself, because you are living proof, that it's possible. And I want to thank you for writing the book, for publishing the book. Thank you so much, because I love it. I ordered it for my library. So I hope
thanks.
that I get it really soon for my library. And that's a way that I use like my library as another way of giving it to the public. Like, that's my gift to the public when I order all these
Yeah,
XJW books, because I'm like, people are going to read this, not just me. Other people are going to
yeah,
say, oh, this new book in the library, let me check it out. And then that brings more awareness to the public, because that's what we really want to do. We want to, bring more awareness to non JWs, so that they can
yeah,
see how it was growing up and the effects that it has on us as adults, because we're not like everybody else. Our brain has been wired differently. So
yeah,
we kind of see the world differently. And you captured that in the book, like the upbringing, the childhood, the preaching, like everything that you went through. I loved it. I felt like I was a part of your family. I felt like I was right there with you in the living room when you were in the living room and you were doing things. Like, everything that you went through was an amazing experience. So I
yeah. A
want to
couple,
thank you
a
so
couple of years.
much.
If you would have been there a couple of years earlier, you might have been in the book movie. Like, because I mean, it's so crazy that we kind of went to the same hall. I mean,
Oh my God, yo. Oh my God. Yes, because I was in Shelby in 2014, but I was disfellowship, so nobody was talking to me.
And how did you end up in Shelby though? I mean, it's just such a random,
So
like,
random. In the middle of nowhere, really, because I was like, I've
yeah,
never been in North Carolina before. What am I doing here? I mean, even I was confused because, I mean, what happened was I'm from New York City. So when I got this fellowship for fornication and I got pregnant, I was 17 years old. And so they disfellowshipped me as a minor, and because of the pregnancy. And so my mom wanted to take me away from all of those people, from the rumors, from the
yeah,
gossip, from everything. So it's just to save face and to save the reputation, because she was still, a Jehovah's Witness. She had the bright idea to move to Shelby, North Carolina, because my grandparents bought a house there. So she took me over there. But the thing was, everybody is Jehovah's Witnesses. So she told me I can't be there. Like, I can't even be in my own grandmother's house because I'm DF, even though I'm still a minor and I'm pregnant. So she just dropped me off at this lady's house. Like, she just bought this house. It was empty. There was only an air mattress. And she dropped me off at that house. And for 3 months, I was isolated in that house, didn't speak to a soul for about 3 months. Like, it was literal prison. And so that's why I told you before, like, I have so much trauma with that town.
yeah.
But
I mean,
when
to be
I was
honest, I
reading,
have trauma with that town, and I didn't go through any of the craziness that you did. Like, it's just a
yeah,
weird town. Shelby is like.
yes.
We used to I remember my friends would take me to Ichabod's. I don't know if you ever went to Ichabod's or not in Shelby. Ichabod's may have been
No.
closed down by the time you got there, but it
Yeah.
was like the local watering hole in Shelby for like sort of the people. It was like the rednecks that thought they were better than the local rednecks or something. So it was like, you'd go there and it'd be like,
Oh,
oh my god, these people are just crazy. It's a weird city. Shelby's a very strange city, and the hall was
right.
like weirder than the hall that I sort of grew up in.
Hmm.
That hall was,
Right.
if anybody from Shelby's watching, no
Sorry.
offense, but
Yeah. Exactly. I'm
y'all
sorry.
got a weird
Yeah.
city. Y'all got a weird city.
Yeah, I mean that's why it was horrible, because I didn't go anywhere. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't go anywhere. I was left in that empty house until we went back to New York. So that's why I kind of had that trauma, because that was like my prison sentence. I
Yeah,
was sent to this prison, and it was in Shelby, North Carolina, in the middle of nowhere in 2014. And it was just like a culture shock, because I'm from a city. I'm not from,
yeah,
this country. And it was a lot of country people, different values, different cultures, and I didn't fit in at all. So
yeah.
it was just horrible. It was just horrible.
And the
But
Cleveland
anyways,
Mall. You had to go to the Cleveland Mall. That was the only.
that's
For,
what we
for anybody
did.
watching this, there was one small mall, and I swear to God, I don't know what it was. Me and my friends would always joke around. If you walked in that mall, there were so many people with leg injuries. I
Yeah,
know this seems
really.
like a weird, obscure thing, but it was like every time we walk in there, you see people on crutches for some reason. No other mall, but that mall, it like broke people's legs or something.
Oh my God. No, by the time I got there, it was like half run down. Half of the stores were closed. It was like a ghost mall. It looked abandoned. Like only half of the
Yeah.
mall was being in use by the time I got there. So we would just go there to just walk by ourselves. Like there was literally nobody there. It,
Well,
it
this is
was
what I worry
horrible.
about. This is what I worry about with my book. If actual young people read it, because that was sort of the audience. I was like, oh, I kind of
Yes.
want to write this for like when I was a teenager, what I would be into reading.
Right.
And I'm like, they're not going to understand the mall. They're not going to
Yeah.
understand like no cell phones, how you could trick parents so easily
Right.
back in the
Right.
day, because of no cell phones. How much freedom you got because of you know,
Exactly.
back when we were kids, it's like you didn't really have those things, so you kind of do whatever you wanted to. There were no one watching you, nothing going on. So I'm always like, man, I hope if a teenager picks up my book now, they can kind of relate to
Right.
that sort of stuff still.
Yep. And everybody would go to Charlotte for all the fun
Yeah,
stuff anyway. So everything's in Charlotte.
yeah,
But I mean, if you're pin dropped in a town like Shelby, I mean, you could get depressed, because it was just nothing there. It was horrible. But that's why I loved your book, because I was like, I got to see the town and everything through
mhm,
your eyes, as if I was a kid again and I was living during that time, because I grew up in the early 2000s, late 90s, when
yeah,
we didn't have phones and stuff like that. So our generation is the one who's really going to enjoy the book.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've given it to I think like two 17-year-olds to read, or it was like a 17 and a 16-year-old to read, both Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm waiting to hear back to see if they read it. But I know too, it's hard to get it's
Mhm.
hard to get teenagers to read. I think these days, maybe I'm just
Yeah.
being a judgy old person, but so I kind of get it. But at least so far, every ex Jehovah's Witness I've given the book to, they've all written me back and gone, oh my god, I think that's a weird thing is we all share that, no matter what generation we came from, we
Right.
all kind of share the same experience with it.
Yes, crazy, right? Like that's
Yeah, yeah,
weird, but oh my goodness. But yeah, I think your book is amazing. I loved it. Whatever you have in the future, whenever you do dip your toes back into this community, always let me know. Like you
yeah,
can
definitely,
always come back
definitely. I
here.
will.
You can always like text me on Twitter. I'm doing a bunch of things. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting into politics. I'm getting into religion. I'm already doing the exjw stuff. But I mean, like I'm doing different things. Like I'm branching into lots of different things. So you can
Yeah, do it.
always let me know
Yeah,
whenever you want to come back.
definitely, definitely, will do, Ruby. And I hope
Right.
you accomplish all the things that you want to accomplish. Like we said, we disagree on some things, but one thing we agree on is
Yeah.
the helping other ex Jehovah's Witnesses and
Right.
building this community into something that can welcome a lot of different people and not just one type of person.
Right. Exactly right. Wow. Thank you so much. I had so much fun here.